Very many Kenyans were shocked to learn that Raila Odinga was the person who invited William Ruto at the African Union Summit held at KICC in Nairobi. Have a look at this before we continue.
Your Excellencies, if there are any of us who are seated, please let's all be upstanding. We're going to start with the Kenyan National Anthem, followed by the AU.
The shock was because a few days ago, Raila badly attacked Ruto's government. So it was expected that the government was not going to give him that opportunity to welcome Ruto at that summit. But as we have seen, Raila was the person who welcomed Ruto at that summit. Rigathi Gachagua was not present. And even in yesterday's meeting at State House Nairobi, Rigathi again was not present. I think it's not coincidence, but all that is by design. There is a reason why Rigathi was not present at today's summit and why he was also not present at a meeting at State House yesterday. I want us to put all this into perspective for Kenyans to understand the high-octane politics being played here. Before we do that, let's listen to William Ruto's closing remarks.
Was to play host to this summit. It was supposed to be chaired by the chair of the Africa Union, the President Mohamed Ghazani of Mauritania. But 3 days ago, he called me and instructed me to also chair this meeting. I obeyed his instructions, and please, Minister, you can report back to him that I was not only the host, but I chaired the meeting very efficiently. It ended actually ahead of time. And as we conclude this summit, I extend my very deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for your dedicated insights and commitment in addressing fertilizer and soil health issues in our continent, specifically to the heads of state who have lent their comments, their ideas on how we can do this from a perspective of each and every country. Our discussions have, in the past 3 days, been enlightened as we explored innovative solutions, shared best practices, and forged partnerships to drive sustainable growth in the agricultural sector. I want to commend the ministers of agriculture, the ministers of foreign affairs, staff from our AU led by Josefa for a wonderful job they have done, and of course to commend the leadership of Mohamed Faki, our chair of Africa Union Commission, for facilitating this whole exercise and making the outcome of this summit what it is. The summit focused on soil degradation, sustainable soil health, accelerating inclusive agricultural transformation, ending hunger, malnutrition, and poverty of our growing populations. We have made significant commitments in the areas of fertilizers, soil health, and financing. I believe these commitments will greatly contribute to achieving the Africa we want, as outlined in the AU Agenda 2063. I urge my fellow heads of state and government to collaborate closely in implementing the endorsed 10-year plan for sustainable soil health at the domestic level.
Raila welcoming Ruto at that summit is clearly not sitting on wall with some Kenya Kwanza supporters and leaders, more so regarding Gachagua and his team. Let's now dig deep and see what that means politically. That summit was dubbed Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit. African leaders converged to look into ways of improving the health of soil in Africa, and more so on the best qualities of fertilizer to use in African soil. And it's as if they wanted to find a way of coming up with their customized fertilizer that will fit the African soil. It's very interesting and at the same time very ironical that as the event was happening in Nairobi, Kenya's agriculture minister was being grilled in parliament for having allowed fake fertilizer to be sold to Kenyan farmers. And that fake fertilizer that was sold to Kenyan farmers clearly killed the health of the Kenyan soil. So again, if you see the summit being held and Kenya is the one hosting it, I see that as very ironical and a slap on the face to Ruto. And when William Ruto stood to speak and also to give his closing remarks, he was trying to urge African leaders to implement the agreements. Will Ruto's government implement the agreement? Let's leave alone other African governments. Will Ruto and his government implement the agreement that has been made in Nairobi? I don't think so. I'm seeing hypocritical leaders who are actually taking the world and Africa for granted. They are very good when it comes to making good and wonderful speeches, but when it comes to implementation, they do the exact opposite. And that can also expose some other African leaders who talk, but when it comes to action, they don't act. So the summit, in my honest opinion, has achieved nothing. In fact, it was a good wastage of time. If Kenya is the one that hosted that summit, and William Ruto is the person who chaired that summit, then it was a very big joke. I don't think it will yield anything. Let me stop it there, ladies and gentlemen. If you are watching us but you have not yet subscribed, subscribe, give the video a like. Those watching us outside Kenya, drop a comment, let us know from which part of the globe you are watching us from. If possible, subscribe, give the video a like. And the mere fact that Rigathi skipped the summit and also yesterday skipped the State House meeting, that confirms things are not cordial between Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua. Let's meet in our next analysis. Thank you.
Excellencies, if there are any of us who are seated, please let's all be upstanding. We're going to start with the Kenyan national anthem, followed by the